Hamas rockets. Hamas rockets will cease when Israel's occupation ends. They are deadly. Most of what is counted as deadly rockets by Israel is nothing more than an improvised, rudimentary, makeshift, and imprecise bottle rocket. Consider these figures. Between 2001 and 2012, Hamas fired 13,000 rockets and mortar shells at Israel and killed 23 civilians total. By contrast, during that same time, Israel killed thousands and thousands of civilians by launching illegal bombing campaigns upon Gaza. Or even more precise, in Operation Cast Lead, Hamas fired 900 projectiles at Israel, killing 3 civilians. By contrast, Israel killed 1,400 Palestinians, and 350 of them were children. Human shields. Of the hundreds and hundreds of human rights reports that have been written on Israel and Palestine, none of them have found any evidence that Hamas uses its own civilians as human shields. There is, however, a mountain of evidence that conclusively proves that the IDF uses Palestinians as human shields. Terror tunnels. Then why not just seal them from Israel's side? No, we gotta blow them up. They use the tunnels to smuggle weapons and kill civilians. And that's a lie. Even Israeli officials admit that any attacks by Hamas through tunnels have always targeted military installations. Iron Dome. Yeah, it worked so well on October 7th, didn't it? It works great. Actually, much of the evidence suggests that Iron Dome doesn't do shit. Nuh-uh. Wrong. In the time of the Bible, Hamas charter. Beheaded baby. Self-defense! That's only an excuse if they're not violently occupying a land which does not belong to them. Security concerns. Chocolate, chickpeas, food, water, children's puzzles, medical supplies are security concerns. That helps their economy, so it helps Hamas. So you were admitting to the war crime of collective punishment. I ask you honestly, of the two, Hamas and the Israeli state, who has the monopoly on violence? Hamas uses hospitals as command posts. Of the hundreds of human rights reports that have been written on this matter, none have produced any evidence that Hamas uses hospitals as command posts. The human rights reports have, in fact, found the opposite. Israel targets hospitals indiscriminately and without a military objective, and without any evidence of enemy presence in a hospital. Nuh-uh. Well, I hate to break it to you, but even the Israeli government admits this. Nuh-uh. Furthermore, Israel has been bombing Palestinian hospitals ever since 1982, even before there was a Hamas. Israel literally started a war with Lebanon by bombing a Palestinian children's hospital, killing 60 people in 1982. In 2009, during Operation Cast Lead, Israel destroyed or damaged 12 hospitals. In Operation Cast Lead, Israel destroyed or damaged 217 schools, 60 nurseries, 40 primary health care clinics, and 12 hospitals, including 29 ambulances. In 2014, during Operation Protective Edge, Israel destroyed or damaged 24 medical health facilities. And many of these hospitals were not struck once, not twice, but 3 times. Now, given the history, do you honestly believe that Hamas logically thinks that it is safe to set up command posts inside hospitals, or schools for that matter, when that has precisely been the very buildings that Israel intentionally targets? Use your head. Wow, so you're anti-Semitic. The Israelis didn't do it. Israel always targets hospitals. In fact, since October 7th, they've bombed 19 hospitals and put out of commission entirely 3. Read through the human rights reports of Operation Protective Edge in 2014 and Operation Cast Lead in 2009. Israel always targets hospitals. In 1982, in fact, they started a war with Lebanon by bombing a Palestinian children's hospital. 60 of its occupants were killed. Yeah, but Hamas misfired that rocket. You know it. So let me get this straight. According to Israel, since October 7th, Hamas has fired 6,000 rockets and killed dozens of people. And yet, according to the Associated Press, it was a rocket fragment, not a rocket, but a rocket fragment that hit a hospital parking lot and was able to kill 500 people. So 6,000 rockets have been fired at Israel, killing a couple dozen people. And 1 rocket fragment kills 500 people. Well, that doesn't mean that Israel did it. We just don't know conclusively yet. And why do you think that is? Gaza is one of the most surveilled places on earth. If the United States believes that Hamas has misfired a rocket against its own people, then why doesn't it release the satellite imagery? Second point, why is it that the United States has vetoed a decision to allow independent weapons inspectors into Gaza who could easily ascertain whether that was a Hamas rocket fragment or an Israeli missile strike? Could it be that the United States is culpable in covering up Hamas war crimes? I can't believe that Hamas would do such a thing, Be violent like that? Wow. Totally uncalled for. Totally uncalled for. Can you believe that? Disgusting. Oh, God, this guy cut me off on the highway the other day. I wanted to kill him. I mean, really, like I was like speeding and goes. I've got the road rage, I guess. It's just like, how many Arab states are there? Like, couldn't you just bring them to Egypt? Why isn't Egypt taking them in? Okay? Maybe this is Egypt's fault. Maybe this is all Egypt's fault, okay? Oh no, but that's anti-Semitic though. That's anti-Semitic. Well, I just think that they just want to murder all the Jews. Call me crazy. But the Jews, they went through the Holocaust. Therefore, they have a right to do that to other people now. It's only fair. Okay, but 2,000 years ago, okay? 1300 BC-ish? That's what people don't understand, simpletons just don't understand, the history. You have to go back to the Tessaraic period. You have to go back to the Cretaceous period. Then you get to understand. Yeah, well, Putin's an imperial colonizer, He's just hell-bent on taking over Ukraine and, reinstating the Soviet Union. He wants to put the old band back together. He's a psychopath. He is. He's a psychopath. Why would he do that? Why is he bombing Ukraine? That's not right. You don't bomb Ukraine. You don't bomb Ukrainian civilians. Those civilians are innocent, okay? They had Can we pray for the Ukrainian civilians, please? Amen. Blessed. They brought this on themselves. You do realize that, right? They could have had a good deal. It was a good deal, okay? You could have gone back. I bet you, if they could go back to 1948 and accept that partition plan and keep their mouth shut, they would do it now. Oh yeah, they would do it now. It's a pretty damn good deal, ain't it? This is war. This is a war. This is literally a war. This is definitely a war. This is totally a war. This is a big time war between good and evil. Yep. Hamas are terrorists. Well, that's because Israel is a terror state. When you terrorize a civilian population for decades and decades, those civilians tend to turn militant and fight back. Hamas is running Gaza like a military dictatorship. Well, they were democratically elected in 2006 by the Palestinian people in what Jimmy Carter, who was there at the time, referred to as a completely fair and honest election. Well, even if that's the case, that was the last election they ever had. Look how they've mismanaged Gaza. And let's go into why that is. Gaza has been under an internationally recognized illegal blockade ever since 2006, imposed by Israel, punctuated by periodic mass murdering invasions conducted by Israel. Every few years, Israel destroys Gaza with an illegal bombing campaign. Israel controls Gaza's airspace, its land and sea borders. Nothing and no one goes into Gaza, and nothing and no one comes out of Gaza without Israel's approval. The people of Gaza have been deprived of their human rights. They have been denied their right to self-determine. Virtually the entire world agrees with what I've just said to you. Israel has even blocked the import of chocolate, children's puzzles, other various foods, water, and vital medical supplies, in addition to bombing their hospitals every 5 years. If you defend Israel in any of this, you have no moral high ground. If you cry outrage over Hamas resorting to violence in this situation, in this context, you are proving your own racist inherent bias and your non-commitment to moral principles of the most elementary kind. You cannot condemn a group of people for resorting to violence when they are up against another social organization which has an entire monopoly on violence and who uses it indiscriminately. Look, you boys want to have legitimacy in the eyes of the international community? You got to do it the good old American way, okay? You got to participate in elections. Otherwise, there's no point. Please allow us the opportunity. All right, now. No. I'm sorry, but I must intercede here. We cannot let Hamas run in any elections. And why is that? They will win. It's fine. Let's let this one ride. But sir, I said let it ride. This is an outrage. Stand down, Lieutenant. I cannot believe. I said stand down. That's more like it. Don't you forget who runs the show. Yes, we have won the election. Hamas now governs the Gaza Strip. You see, America, this is your fault. This is a goddamn nightmare. Look, sometimes there's nothing to it but to coup it. I cannot believe you are trying to coup our government. We only did what you asked us to do, participate in a free and fair election. You weren't supposed to win. We have successfully thwarted the evil attempts by the United States and Israel to coup our government. We are still the governing body. Not if I have anything to say about it. Guess it's time for us to mow that lawn. Do the Israelis not have the right to defend themselves? Do the Palestinians not have the right to liberate themselves? Killing civilians is not liberating yourself. It's uncalled for. If you truly believe that, then where is your criticism of the Israeli government, which has killed exponentially far more innocent civilians in its 56-year-long illegal occupation of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank? This isn't an NFL football game. This isn't an even playing field. One side completely, utterly, unilaterally dominates the other. Economically, militarily, socially, culturally. There is no comparison between the two. It cannot be said with a straight face that the Israeli government is trying to liberate itself. Rather, it is trying to maintain its vice-like grip on a besieged population comprised mostly of children. I don't condone the killing of civilians. You do condone the killing of civilians. Palestinian civilians. You say you don't condone, but you only condemn when Palestine does it. The truth is, you do condone the killing of civilians. That is not true. After every high-tech murderous campaign conducted by the Israeli government over the past 2 decades, Operation Rainbow, Operation Summer Rains, Operation Autumn Clouds, Operation Hot Winter, Operation Cast Lead, Operation Days of Penitence, Operation Protective Edge. Where were you? Did you even know about these operations? Were they even seriously reported in the press? It is your silence that gives permission. You know what the press wants you to know. You say what the press wants you to say, because you don't dig deep enough. Let's do a thought experiment. You've already heard, shortly after October 7th, the Israeli President Isaac Herzog say publicly that there is no such thing as innocent civilians in Gaza, meaning that civilians in Gaza are no different than enemy combatants and will be treated as targets. Now, if the Palestinians indeed live in a military dictatorship as Israeli officials claim, and if the charge is that the Palestinian civilians somehow bear the brunt of responsibility for the actions of the Hamas leadership, then what can be said about the democracy of Israel, who carries out murderous, high-tech bombing campaigns, 90% of which its own public, its own civilians, Israeli civilians, support? Are they not also complicit in the actions of their government? Why is this logic only applied to Palestinians and not Israelis? There's actually a stronger case that says that Israeli civilians are complicit in the actions of their government, being that it is a Western-style liberal democracy and not a military dictatorship. I gotta go, I'm late for brunch. Right, because as we all know, the side that is picking peace in this situation is the side committing ethnic cleansing against a civilian population that has no way to defend itself. I cannot tell you how insufferable this is right here. This is big time loser energy right here. What they fail to understand is that when it comes to a vicious, apartheid state regime which sanctions terror and violence for decades and decades, it is no surprise that militant groups like Hamas are the only ones that survive. All the moderate dissidents are dead. Israel vehemently opposes the idea of a two-state solution. This person will never really truly grasp how much the Palestinian people have tried for peace over the years. They tried with Yasser Arafat. They tried with the PLO. They tried with the Fatah movement. And as they increasingly and correctly viewed the Palestinian Authority as being corrupt because the Palestinian leaders were groomed by the Israeli and United States, they have been left with no other option. That is why in 2006 they elected Hamas. And even when Hamas was democratically elected, the United States and Israel sought to engineer a military coup that would seize power from Hamas. When Hamas preempted that coup, the United States and Israel and the Western media tried to say that Hamas was coupping its own government, as if that makes any sense. They just won an election. Why would they coup their own government? No, they were defending against a military coup that was trying to oust them from power. And because they had to do that, they had to consolidate their power. When you have an imperial, psychopathic, violent, terroristic state power that is ruthless, what are you going to do? What options do these people have? They have no choice but to fight. They are not left with an out. In true liberal form, liberals always look at the surface. They judge an event as if it's divorced from the reality of which it is born, as if it has no context whatsoever. To a liberal, Hamas is just evil. I mean, that's the only way that they can describe it, right? The Hamas are just bad men out to do bad things, and they're evil, and they just want to wreak violence. Liberals never want to know the grievances. They don't understand how the policies that have shaped our world have contributed to terrorism. This person's never heard of Operation Cast Lead, which was an egregious, abysmal, destructive raid on Gaza, which killed 1,200 civilians and 350 children. Liberals never want to listen to the decades-long history of Gaza getting raided year after year, getting destroyed. They don't want to hear about the illegal sanctions and blockades, the fact that Gaza is an open-air concentration camp being laid to siege, not even just now, which has gotten much worse, but even before October 7th, it was technically under siege. It was technically being occupied by Israeli forces, even though the Israeli forces were deployed around the perimeter of the wall that was built to enclose the civilian population of Palestine. Is this not ringing true? Is this not making sense to you yet? That this is a fucking prison that they were hoarded into and then are getting air raided and bombed? If everyone thought like this, like violence is just violence, it doesn't matter who's doing it, all violence is bad, then slavery would have never been overthrown. If everyone thought like this liberal, we would have never overcome slavery. We would have never overcome the feudal system. Haitian slaves would have never been free from their French colonial oppressors. Because when it's white people doing the violence, it's fine. When brown people are doing the violence, that is not okay. So this liberal will totally disregard the power dynamic at play in this situation, totally disregard the power differential between these two social groups, one being a complete and dominant state power, and the other being a prison population, basically third-rate citizens, subjugates, basically slaves. And they will look at the economic and the military and political devastation that one social group is doing onto another in material terms and still condemn the vulnerable group for lashing out, for acting out in violence, because they have been left with no other option. They've been orphaned by society. They've been orphaned by the world. Hamas are religious fanatics. Israel is a Jewish supremacist ethno-state. If any people are religious fanatics, it's Israelis. Well, Islam sure does breed a lot of suicide bombers. Israel and the United States breed a lot of suicide bombers. Israel and the US do not suicide bomb civilians. You're right, they have better technology than that. They use robots and remote controllers to bomb at a safe distance because they're cowards. I just cannot believe that you don't condemn the violence of October 7th. I can't believe that you don't condemn Israel's 75-year-long illegal and violent occupation of the Gaza Strip. I can't believe that you don't condemn the Deir Yassin massacre or the Shatila massacre, or let alone even heard of them. Israel has the right to defend itself against terrorists. The Palestinians have a right to defend themselves from their own violent and illegal occupation. Israel cannot invoke the right to self-defense in occupied territory. Don't build your religious supremacist apartheid ethno-state next to a concentration camp that you've been terrorizing, massacring, and exploiting for the better part of a century.
Nixon ordered Cambodian genocide. Clinton sent cruise missiles to Sudan, people died. You gave the orders to do drone strikes. Invaded Nicaragua in '85.